to enjoy, that you gave us to serve you. Dear Lord, we just ask that you fill us with your wisdom tonight, dear Lord, and the things that we say and our thoughts and our actions, dear Lord, will line up with your will. Dear Lord, we realize you're in control of all things. Dear Lord, we just ask for safe travel for everybody as they leave tonight. And dear Lord, we just ask a special blessing for our staff who's worked so hard to organize and prepare this meeting this evening. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you. All right, I'll call the Tuesday, April 13 meeting of the Planning Commission to order. We'll have a roll call, Mr. Pope.
Excuse me. Mr. Allen? Here. Mr. Kane?
Here.
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Robinson?
Here.
Mr. Allens?
Here.
Ms. Barnes-Rhodes?
Here.
Ms. Odom?
Here.
Mr. Antoine?
Here.
Ms. Wiley?
Here.
Thank you. Are there any agenda items to be added, Mr. Pope?
There are no agenda items to be added. I would like to make a change to the agenda. We have 3 cases tonight. The first one we're going to hear is going to be Jerry Powell Ministries special use permit case. I think there are a couple people here for that. I would like to go into public hearing, hear the staff report and any comments, go out of public hearing and take action on that so the people that are here for that case can go and leave. Then we can go back into public hearing for the other 2 cases.
Okay, I don't see a problem with that. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as printed then?
Make a motion.
We have a motion. How about a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think that was unanimous. The minutes from last in February, you have a copy of those. Hope you've had time to look at them. Does anyone see any issues that we should change or any corrections? Hearing none, I'd ask for a motion to approve the February minutes as printed.
So move.
Thank you, Ms.
Second.
Wiley. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Second. Is there further discussion? If not, everybody say aye. It is ready to vote.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. We need to get a motion to go into public hearing. First of all, for the SP 1-21 Jerry Powell Ministries. Can I get a motion to go in public hearing?
I make a motion.
Have a motion as a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are now in public hearing to hear SP 1-21 Jerry Powell. Mr.
All
Pope.
right. Before I give my staff report, I want to apologize in advance. I've been dealing with some respiratory issues, so I'm going to probably get to coughing and wheezing and hacking up here, so just bear with me. The case tonight is SP 121. The applicant's Jerry Powell of Jerry Powell Ministries. The property that is the subject of the zoning request is located on Skippers Road, adjacent to Brook Ridge Apartments. The property is zoned R2B multifamily and has a vacated industrial building located upon it. The applicant is requesting a special use permit to establish an adult outreach center. When we look at the zoning ordinance, we find that the R2B multiple family district is established to provide appropriate location for housing consisting primarily of rental apartments and other dwelling types preferring higher densities. This district is intended to be established only in locations where water and sewer are available. In addition, it is anticipated that areas developed at this density will require additional public, semi-public, and private uses to support and enhance the neighborhood. The primary intent of the R2 district is to promote the establishment within the county of a variety of higher density housing styles designed primarily for rental at affordable prices. When we look at Article 4, Table 4.1 of the zoning ordinance, the permitted use table, it indicates that an adult outreach center is a use that is allowed within the R2B zoning district with the issuance of a special use permit. In granting any such special use permit, the Board of Supervisors may impose any such conditions in connection therewith as will assure that it will conform to the requirements contained herein within the zoning ordinance and will continue to do so. a special use permit shall not be issued by the board unless the board finds that the proposed use would not be detrimental to the community. The proposed use is in conformity with the comp plan and policies. Excuse me. All right, when we turn to the comprehensive plan, I'm not going to read everything at the comprehensive plan that pertains to the R2.
Lynn,
Yes,
I have a home emergency. I gotta run, I'll be back. I gotta go.
okay. When we look at the comp plan citations, if we look in the goals and objectives under land use general category, we find that it encourages new development that complements surrounding uses. It wants us to concentrate development in appropriate locations by encouraging more efficient site design and incorporating proper buffers between different uses. It also encourages the infield development of different housing types and densities. When we look at housing in the community development section, is to promote, again, compatible infield development into existing neighborhood, encouraging a diversity of housing types. When we look at the planning issues and strategies under housing issues, the comp plan promotes a variety of safe, sanitary, and affordable types of housing for county residents, all groups. It states that we shall work with organizations to identify new programs and funding sources, particularly at state level, which may be utilized to meet the housing needs of the disadvantaged. When we look at the land use plan, you should have a copy of the future land use map. It depicts general land use concepts for Greensville County. The purpose of this plan is to recommend the orderly development of the county. The plan outlines the recommended development patterns for the county over the next 20 years. You'll see on that map that this property is located in a medium-density residential area, which allows greater density and variation of housing types. All right, when we look at the character of the properties in the area surrounding the subject property, the property consists of properties that are zoned M1 industrial, B2 business, and R2B multifamily. We have apartments, 2 single-family dwellings, a welding shop, and a vacant industrial building, and an automotive garage nearby. The property is accessed by a gravel entrance, which begins at US Route 301 and terminates on the property. The property is serviced by both public water and public sewer. Excuse me. All right, when we analyze the applicant's request, like I said, we'll give you a little bit of history. The property that is subject to the rezoning request was zoned M1 business in the M1 industrial in the early 1980s when the county developed its first zoning ordinance and established specific zoning districts. At the time, the subject property was home to Miller Homes and later Kraft Distant, both who utilized the property for industrial purposes. Kraft Distant closed the stores in the early 1990s, and the property has sat vacant since that time. In recent years, Brook Ridge Apartments was constructed, which changed the character of the area somewhat. And in January of 2020, of this year, the subject property was rezoned from M1 to R2B multifamily residential. When you look at the urban service area map that's found in the land use plan, this property is right on the border of a residential and commercial hub on that urban service area map. Residential land uses within this urban service district envisions include a full range of low to medium density residential developments. Low density in this area is single family dwellings with between 2 and 3 lots per acre. Medium densities 8 to 10 units per acre. Staff is of the opinion that it would be appropriate to approve a special use of permit for an adult outreach center located upon the property for several reasons. First reason, the subject property is located in this urban service area in which low-density and medium-density development is expected. It's served by public water and sewer, the public highway system. The applicant will have to work with VDOT concerning some entrance requirements VDOT has, and he'll have to obtain a land use permit for an entrance that meets VDOT's entrance standards off of 301. I attached a copy of VDOT's letter that they submitted, and I provided the applicant with their phone number so he can get in touch with them to provide them additional information concerning the entrance. The second reason, while the applicant only wishes to provide temporary transitional type housing, approval of the applicant's request would provide decent, safe, and sanitary housing in a suitable environment for citizens regardless of race, gender, age, or income. Number three, approval of the applicant's request promotes compatible infield development. Number four, in the planning and issues and strategy section of the comp plan, it is recommended that the county work with organizations to identify new programs and funding sources which may be utilized to meet the needs of the housing disadvantaged. Because of the noted reasons, staff recommends approval of the request with the conditions noted below. And there are 15 conditions. I assume everybody's read all the conditions in the report, so I won't go through all of the conditions. These conditions were put in there to protect surrounding properties from any nuisances that might be created by the development of this site. So tonight, there's three things the Planning Commission can choose to do. The first would be a recommend approval of the application with stated or amended conditions if y'all feel we need to amend any conditions. Recommend denial of the application or defer the application to a later date. And I apologize, I struggled trying to get through that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pope. Is the applicant, I thought I saw the applicant here somewhere. Mr. Powell, is he close by? Does he want to speak to this process? I think here he comes in. State your name, Mr. Powell, for the record. Thank you.
It's Jerry Powell. I'm a resident of Greensville County. Let's stand here today, my wife, Jane, as we stand here to ask you to help me help others. The fact that I've been in the jail ministry 15 years, and I have at home a little house that I help bring when guys come out to help them in my own home. But in the vision, I believe the Lord called me to do greater works with me. And this is a ministry. And those guys have paid, when they come out, they have paid their time. My job, our job, is to help them get a hold of society, to be the fathers to children, the husband to wives, and taxpayer citizens, and to be all what the Lord called them to do. I believe the Lord called me to do that. I've been working with this vision for a long time. I've been looking at this building for years, and I want the opportunity to go further with this building to improve. Like I say, would be housing, temporarily, would be food and training, all those things to prepare those young men for jobs, and also to be after God's heart. You know, and that's a passion for me. I've been a citizen of this community for all my life. You know, and that's my passion. So I'm asking you to help me fulfill this vision for the employee Virginia help me help those young men, and not only young men, this outreach center is for our community also. Feeding people, I want to be able to feed people, I want to have a nighttime, to feed people at nighttime, the homeless and so forth like that, so, I'm asking you to help me do this, which I've been talking with this for years. And I just believe in the midst of it all, that showing my love and desire for these men and these homeless people. And I think this is the place forward, and I've been, like I said, I already moved forward with it, but I had to come back to just get the permit, you know, so last time I asked you to, help me to help others by, complying with me to go forward with this. Like I said, I put my time in, and the feeling would be, 24 hours. There'll be somebody there, you know, so I pretty much got the plan together, pretty much, you know. And I got a lot of support from the community already, you know, so I'm just waiting for get this permit so I can get rolling, pretty much. So, my wife,
What's your name, ma'am? Your name?
Virginia
Thank,
Powell.
thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Just to add a little more to what my husband just said, he pretty much said it all. But we do understand how safety is first with the community. So each applicant will be screened to make sure that they are right for our program, because safety is first. That's pretty much all I want.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners or Ms. Powell?
Mr. Powell, you will be on-site managing this facility personally?
yes, pretty much, I have to, and my staff, yes, sir.
Can you explain, like, what your staff will, because that's been some of the questions that I have heard. Maybe just explain how you'll manage, or your staff, or just a little bit about that.
Okay, first of all, this is a Christian-based program, pretty much. As you see here, let me read you my mission. Then I can go down what I'm gonna be doing, providing range of programs, transit and housing, food pantry, clothes, closet, education services, training center, Christian education. It's the, okay, Father being ran, let's see, Father being ran is to be able to, as Father housed them for 6 months. I would be able to having classes, we'll be having classes there, for them, you know, fathers, learning, different things. We're having also, what the class is, I apologize.
Substance abuse classes.
Substance abuse class and so forth. It would be it would be led up to 5 o'clock. After 5 o'clock, pretty much, they'll be going in, for the night, pretty much. Still working on things with that, and I'm trying to be able to, get my rights. I have staff, pretty much, someone to help, so we'll fix it. Like I say, it'll be open 24 hours, but there will be somebody there at all times, you know. Like I say, I pretty much know how I want to do this, pretty much, I'm just waiting for, you know, pretty much. I'm at a standstill right now, pretty much, but like I say, they train these guys, to be ran like, pick a one, doing certain things, having Bible study, training, activities, hands-on activities, and whatnot, so, pretty much. I want to start off at least for 5 men, you know, that's what.
And as far as the security goes, we will have different people taking different shifts to make sure that the facility is always manned with someone there, to make sure that everything is going smoothly. So it will be manned 24/7.
And also the sheriff department is going to be working with also pretty much if needed.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you, Ms. Powell. Is anyone in the audience want to speak for this or opposed to it?
My name is Ron Ripley. We are the owners of Brookridge Apartments. Good evening, gentlemen. My brother Scott is here, and I know the partner, Andy Ball. We've owned, we built and developed the properties about 20 years ago.
Can you pull your microphone up a little bit? You're fairly tall and we're having a hard time.
Better?
That's better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We built these properties about 20 years ago and have owned and managed them ever since. The property is made up of families, and there are a lot of children in this property. And when you rezone the property, notice I think was sent to my lender, but I never received notice of the rezoning. What if I had been down here, I certainly wouldn't have opposed the multifamily zoning, but the intended use is concerning. And I would like to have had a little more definition about what exactly this application is. I think the use Mr. Powell described is a very laudable vision, and I think it's a wonderful thing he's taking on. But I have to be concerned about the people that live in the property. I probably have 100 children that live in this property, and I need to be concerned with anything that might influence them, cause them a problem. And so if you're going to grant this special use permit, then I think you need to apply some pretty good compatibility buffers that would help the two reside together. Don't know what your intention is tonight, but I don't think it's a compatible use particularly. But if you are going to do this, then I think you need some fencing and buffering between it. And I think the buffering needs to include fencing and landscaping. And I wrote a memo to Mr. Pope. I think you might have a copy of it. Does everybody have a copy of that? And I outlined about 9 different things in there, one of which was install a solid 6-foot fence. I like for it backed off 10 feet off the property line. Leland cypress or some indigenous plant that grows that buffers between the fence and the property line. I'd like to see the entrance, anything with this adaptive. I'm not really sure what's going to be done to the buildings. That's what's not clear. And to diverge from my memo, the applicant never contacted us. I would have thought that's what the applicant would wanted to have done, to talk to us about what he had planned, how can we mitigate these things, so that I'm not standing here tonight talking to you about that and asking you to consider these things. Perhaps we could have worked this out. The application is just not real clear, in my opinion. I don't know how many units are going to be in there. I don't know what he's going to do to the building. I don't know if he's going to put any new landscaping in, make it look better. Just to me, there's some things that I think ought to be addressed. Maybe you need to defer it, have him come back and give you a little more specifics, but I would like to see that, quite frankly. The other things that I put in here are prepare, I know that you're not going to want anybody loitering on the property, but I just want to make sure there's no loitering on the property, other than what his activities are. If you approve it, any activities, I would like for him to have them north of his buildings, so that activity, since he's got 8 acres of land, he doesn't need to be having between the apartments and the buildings. He could be north of the building, it'd be easy thing to do. Lighting, I think, is addressed, but I would like to see lighting definitely pointed away from the apartment, so they're not up into the apartment windows. So, the other thing, if, you know, he talked about having somebody there 24 hours a day. I just want to make sure that's really, in fact, the case. And again, how many units are you going to approve? Are you approving 6 units, 12 units? You know, hopefully you will put a limit on that so that it doesn't turn into a whole bunch of housing units there. So that's really an open-end number, and I'd like to have the number. I really appreciate you to address that and consider that. And then the last thing that I put in here is that this special use permit to be administratively approved each year. And that would keep pressure on the applicant, but also would allow us to tell you if we have problems, what they are, try to resolve them. So those are pretty much my concerns. You know, again, it's not clear if this kitchen he's proposing, looks like it needs a kitchen proposed. Is that going to be open to people from the outside, or is that just reserved for people inside that building? Will this turn into a big, people hanging out to eat every night that's not living there? So to me, there's just a lot of open things here. And I really think you need to kind of dig into this and make sure you create something. If you're going to approve it, that's compatible with the 124 apartments that's sitting next door, 100 children, families that are in there. And so that's why I'm here. Okay. So it's good.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley. Any more questions from the commission, from Mr. Ripley?
I will say this. When you say a use permit from year to year, and I look at this, if you issue somebody a permit, it would be unthinkable to think somebody would come before us every year for a permit. Because also, as well as you have an investment there, they're going to have an investment there too. So if you look at it, if we grant a permit, it will be granted and not, I would never say from year to year. And also it's going to work too. If you got 100 kids there, I would think Mr. Powell would have more concern about your kids doing something to him versus him doing something back to you. So that have to be something taken into consideration too. If you're looking at all of your demands here that you want to make. Okay, so your apartments are sitting there, and I understand that your apartments are sitting right there too. And I guess Mr. Powell is still here. I don't know whether or not he won't even address anything you just got through saying.
Well, my recommendation is administrative approval for annually. That would be the planning director. He would have the authority to, if there is a problem, bring it in and you discuss it. I wouldn't suggest you come back to you every year. That wouldn't make sense. I want the public served by that at all. I think it is served by the planning director saying, you're out of whack here and you need to do this or that and bring it back into conformity based on whatever you approve. Children are children, and I'm concerned just the other way. And I understand what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
I'm more concerned for the children than for the people that might move in there.
I would think with his ministry and what he's doing, he'll be more helpful to those kids than harmful. That's my position.
Okay.
He'll be more helpful than harmful.
Thank you.
Any more comments from the commission members? Thank you, Mr. Ripley.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak either in favor or opposed to this project?
I do have a general question, maybe for Lynn and your staff report. Is there a limit of number of sleeping or living units? I heard Mr. Powell say, I think, say 6, I think maybe?
Yeah,
Is there?
it is.
The limit's going to be decided when they do the engineering plans and stuff based on the occupancy of the building. This is going to be a multi-use occupancy, as you're well aware because you're an engineer, and only a portion of the building will be used for residential apartments. So I don't imagine he'll get very many rental units at all with the other spaces he wants to have within the building. Now, he will have to go through not just a site plan process, he's got to have engineered design drawings for everything. Then, once the drawings are approved by the building official, he'll have to come back and get the building permits and everything to do any structural alterations. But I would imagine, and Jerry might be able to answer this, I don't think he would be able to get but probably 6 at the most, if that many,
Yeah, I was just
based on the
curious. I
size
didn't
of the building, and it's going to be a multi-use facility.
Okay. So we don't have anything listed now in the conditions or?
Back page, there's a hand-drawn
It is.
diagram to the living quarters. It's not, I don't know, in relation to the building, that big that is. It's not scale, obviously.
Yeah, I was just curious if we had anything in here as far as conditions. That's kind of what I was asking.
No, that we
Okay.
can, any conditions y'all wish to impose, we can certainly discuss and amend the staff report to include those conditions.
Well, just as a comment, I mean, I can understand Mr. Richards' concern about the fence, and then the road is a gravel road. That's gonna get.
That's where he's got to get, if you look at condition number 3, he's got to go through the land use permit process with VDOT to approve the entrance, not just the location, but the type of entrance that'll be.
That's just the entrance.
That's just the entrance, then we can have conditions concerning from the state right of way, the edge of the state right of way to the facility.
And of course, too, it was the Cypress trees, and that could be, I'm not sure how expensive Cypress trees are, but I'm sure they're not cheap. It may be more than they do, I don't know. Any more questions from anyone? Okay, as we previously discussed, I'd like to go back into regular session to have a decision on Mr. Powell's SP-1-21. If we're ready to do that, I'd like a motion to move back to regular session temporarily.
So moved.
Have a motion on the floor to do that. Have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that? If not, all in favor of going back to regular session just for the Powell ministry, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. We can have a motion, or we have more discussion on this SP-1-21, Jerry Powell ministry. I understand I gotta have you back. Okay, you see on the back, we have 3 options. One to recommend approval, one to deny, and one to defer. I'm ready for a motion from someone to do one of the 3.
Lynn, I will abstain from this. I'll be probably helping Mr. Powell through his process for his site plan and building plans. So I won't vote on this.
All right, so we have 1 abstention already. All right, does anybody else care to make a motion? If not, I guess it just died for the lack of a motion.
I say approve.
I'm sorry?
Approve.
Are you making a motion to approve
Yes.
with the conditions that are stated in Mr. Pope's report?
Yes.
All right. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
All right, I have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion on this? Hearing none, I assume you're ready to vote, all except Mr. Roberts, Mr. Jeff Roberts. All in favor of approving this project SP-1, Jerry Powell Ministries, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, we have 1 opposed. All right, the motion is passed, and must notify Mr. Powell, I'm not sure he's still here, that this will be recommended to the Board of Supervisors for approval with the conditions I think it's 15 conditions on here, Mr. Pope.
Yes.
Okay, can we have a motion then to go back into public hearing to STA-1-21?
So moved.
Thank you. Have a second to that?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of going back into public hearing for ZTA-1-21? Say aye. All right, the motion approved. Now, in a motion of transparency, I'm going to recuse myself on these two items. Turn the gavel over to Mr. Jeff Robinson, in case that later on I'll have some kind of a conflict. All right?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think you might want to go over the protocol for public comments. I have a feeling we have right many speakers here tonight.
What is that now?
The protocol,
Okay, yeah, I'll do that before I leave. Did everybody get a copy of this other than us?
not the protocol, no, sir.
As people came in, they didn't get it?
No, sir.
All right. For public comments tonight, each speaker will be given 3 minutes to address the planning commission. The limit will be strictly enforced. Each speaker will be told when 2 of the 3 minutes have elapsed. Each speaker will be told when his or her 3 minutes have elapsed. Each speaker will be permitted to address the planning commission only once. The 3-minute opportunity to speak cannot be transferred from one speaker to another. Speakers should face the planning commission and address their comments to the planning commission and not to others who are present at the meeting. Speakers should not turn to face and address members in the audience. The planning commission is conducting its public comment session to receive comments from interested parties, so the planning commission will not respond to questions during the public comment session, and the planning commission will not engage in a dialogue with speakers. The planning commission decisions are based on the land use principles, so speakers are encouraged to make comment relevant to the land use issues. Comments concerning the principles governing the planning commission decision will be provided. The planning commission asks that everyone be respectful to others who are here. The planning commission will have the right to ask questions of the applicant during the planning commission's deliberation. And we don't have any applicants tonight.
No, sir.
It's the county.
It's the county's case, yes, sir.
Counties, okay. All right. Mr. Robbins.
All right, so are we in regular session now?
Yes, you're back in, no, you're in public hearing.
We're in public session.
Oh, so we're in public
You're
hearing.
in public hearing.
All right, so we're good to go then?
Yeah.
We'll go over my staff report.
Okay.
At the December 20th meeting of the Greensville County Board of Supervisors, the board tasked the staff to study solar issues and to prepare a report. The board was concerned about the rapid pace at which solar development was occurring throughout the county. 5 projects have already been approved. They include Pumpkin Seed, Greensville Solar, Sadler Solar, Fountain Creek Solar, and Jarrett Solar. County staff has also been contacted by numerous other developers about potential projects. The board was also concerned about the density of project in several areas, the long-term impacts of solar, as well as the fact that developers were inquiring about land that was better suited for residential and commercial development. Many of these prospective projects were located within the urban service area as identified in the county's comp plan. It was the consensus of the board that the county needed to slow down development of solar projects at least until some of the approved projects have been completed. So at the request of the Board of Supervisors, staff generated a solar report, which you have a copy of. I believe it's 32, 34 pages long. As a result of that solar report, staff offers several options when it comes to the zoning ordinance and the comp plan. So the next case kind of goes hand in hand. One's the zoning ordinance, one's the comp plan, so a lot of the same information. So as a result of the report, staff offered several options to the board. These options include, you can make recommended amendments to the zoning ordinance. You can recommend removing everything related to utility scale solar from the zoning ordinance, and you can do nothing. You can recommend that no changes be made by the current zoning ordinance. So if you look at the first option, I have made some recommended changes to the ordinance to consider. So you have a copy of Article 24, and everything in red are changes. And what these changes are, these are the metrics that were previously placed in the comp plan that dealt with the distance between some of our hub districts, the distance between projects, the proximity to the existing power line infrastructure. That's what we originally had put in the comp plan, and now we could move those to the zoning ordinance where they become law, not just merely suggestions. So if you look at the items in red, we would be adding, well, if you look at 24.3 first under zoning districts, utility scale solar projects 5 megawatts or less are not allowed in any district throughout the county. Utility scale solar projects greater than 5 megawatts may be permitted by a special use permit A1 district. The total size shall be less than 1,000 acres with no more than 75% PV coverage. Utility scale solar projects must locate with 1 mile of existing transmission infrastructure, and utility scale projects must locate a minimum of 3 miles of existing.
We lost your mic, Lynn, just in.
Your battery. Here.
There we go. Like I said, I just threw 5 miles. In the comp plan, we had a minimum of 1.5 miles between projects. I tried to develop a map that I included in your staff report here, what was given to you today, that showed the effect of a 2.5 mile radius or a 5 mile radius. Now, those dimensions aren't exact, but it gives you a representation of areas that are located along the existing power line infrastructure that could be developed with a 2.5 mile distance between projects and a 5 mile distance between projects.
So Lynn, you prepared this?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. I was wondering where this came from.
Also, in section 24.3, applications and procedures, there's always been discrepancies in the size of a project. You know, how many acres does the project consist of? So if you look at 24.4C, item number 6, I just added the language that the narrative must identify the total parcel acreage, the total project acreage, including buffered areas and wetlands, and the total acreage that will have PV coverage, so all applications will be consistent when they come in. They were some recommended changes that you can discuss tonight. The other options, like I said, were to remove utility scale solar as a permitted use from table 4.1 of the zoning ordinance, or you can recommend that we make no changes to the zoning ordinance pertaining to the utility scale solar development. I'll be glad to entertain or answer any questions you may have.
Lynn, why don't you mention at this point, next week at our joint meeting Wednesday night for the comp plan?
Yes, next Wednesday, we have our next scheduled work session with the board and the planning commission. And I think, Treva, did you hand out, she handed out your packets. One of the chapters we're discussing next week will be the environmental chapter. And there's a lot of information in that chapter which I think might affect your recommendations as far as solar is concerned. I know y'all hadn't had a chance to read it. We just got it to you as quick as we could. But that is coming up next week that we'll be discussing.
Like what? Like what type of environmental issues are you?
I didn't bring a copy. It's talking about the possibility of doing what they call a water source protection plan for the Nottaway, which is the county's source of water, to where you have like an overlay district, to where you limit certain types of development, so you don't have to worry about contaminating the watershed. There's forestal issues. I haven't been through the whole thing yet either because I just got it, but that's on our agenda for Wednesday night.
So this was stuff that,
This is the normal process we're going through with the comp plan. and
right,
that
so
was
these
just-
were recommendations by the Berkeley group.
Yes, correct.
So are we saying that tonight we're going to, obviously, it's a public hearing, so we're going to listen to everyone tonight, and then at the end of the night, take that into consideration with what we discuss next week, and then work on this? Is that our objective for tonight?
Yes. Well, like I said, we have three choices. The concern that was expressed to me by the board at the January, I think it's 21st meeting, was the rapid pace of solar. If we don't make any changes, if we get 10 solar applications tomorrow, we have to run them through the process.
Right.
If we, or y'all, want to take a break and let's see how some of these projects that hadn't been completed yet turn out, you might want to remove it as a use allowed right now and revisit it, after some of these projects are complete. I mean, that's why we're bringing it here tonight, is for us to discuss.
Well,
these
what are we
issues.
concerned about? I mean, this addresses, the markup that you gave us addresses everything from small scale all the way up to utility scale. So the Board of Supervisors feels as if the entire plan needs to be revisited, or if it's just they are concerned about these small 3 to 5 megawatt projects.
I think they're concerned about the overall density that we're headed to with solar development.
Meaning the total number, not small, not large. They're lumping a 3 megawatt project as the same as a 100 megawatt project.
The small, less than 5 megawatt utility projects don't have to go on a distribution line. They can go on a 3-phase line anywhere in the county. And some of the well, they're not applicants yet, but some of the developers are coming in with projects that are, I've got 4 right next to Washington Park that are in business districts, industrial districts, some platted neighborhoods. They're coming in and want to develop, those future residential and commercial type areas. So I think that's the concern with the small scale projects. The concern with the large utility scale projects is just, the total density we're going to have throughout the county, if we keep getting more applications.
Well, when I look at it, and what I find confusing from the 2013 to the 2018 plan, we used the terminology 20 megawatts. We used it everything above or everything below 20 megawatt. Then, when we revisited this in 2019, Berkeley Group suggested that we use the terminology small scale, medium scale, and utility scale. I think we were led to believe that small scale meant rooftop solar. So it meant anything under 1 megawatt, but it did not specifically say 1 megawatt. It just listed it as small scale for a particular structure. And that's allowed by right. in every zoning district. Then medium scale was listed, that it was allowed in our commercial and industrial zones by right, again, for a specific structure, meaning a business and industrial park could put up a facility, but medium scale is not defined in terms of how many megawatts. It's just defined by right, and that it would support that structure, that facility. Then we gave it the ability to have utility scale solar. We did not find megawatt, but we just said utility scale solar is allowed in an agricultural district with an SUP. So what I find confusing is that now throughout the county, 3 to 4 megawatt projects, because Dominion issued an RFP for 3 or 4 megawatt projects. So we are, I guess that's what you're being inundated with, is that solar developers want to put in 3 to 4 megawatt projects. So by our definition, they are allowed only in agricultural zone, only with the issuance of an SUP. Now, again, I believe that there's a difference in utility scale solar, meaning utility scale solar is a grid transmission on a transmission line, on a 230 kV line or a 500 kV line, whereas these small 3 to 4 megawatt projects are going to go on a distribution line and can be pretty much anywhere in the county, as long as it's in an A1 zone. So it seems as if we have already addressed anything that could happen. So that's why I'm trying to figure out what the intent is. Because we only allow 3 to 4 megawatt, if that's the concern. That's kind of what I thought the concern was by the Board of Supervisors. They're only allowed in agricultural zones. They're only allowed with an SUP, correct?
Correct.
Our problem is that I think some people, if you talk to solar developers, some of them say, well, a utility scale solar project is anything above 20 megawatts because it's going to go on a big transmission line. They don't consider a 3 to 4 megawatt project utility scale. However, the definition of utility scale could be 1 megawatt or more. But we don't allow the 3 to 4 megawatt projects in a residential area. They're only allowed in a agricultural district. Again, in my mind, where this gets a little bit confusing is because we used that terminology of medium scale, but it only produces enough energy for the structure that it is attached to. I do see some benefit in us cleaning that language up so that that's not confusing, but I don't see the need to change anything else.
In Article 23, y'all hear me, of the zoning ordinance under definitions, utility scale is defined as any project greater than 1 megawatt.
Right. And so, if we wanted to, again, I think when we were talking about in the zoning ordinance where we have the paragraph where it talks about medium scale solar, if we wanted to clean that up and just, again, it can't produce any more megawatt than what the structure needs. Make sure that it says that. I think it kind of says something to that effect. But, and then then we define that, that utility scale solar is 1 megawatt. So therefore I was confused why then you would then want to put a restriction in there that was under 5 megawatt.
I didn't bring the list of definitions with me in Article 23, I only brought Article 24. But these changes won't affect projects that are not utility scale. You know, if DOC wanted to put something to power their facility, the schools did, that won't affect, they're not utility scale projects.
Exactly, right. They're not utility scale projects, right? Because they're going to, it's going to be on site, it's producing enough kilowatts to support that structure, no more, no less. I've seen language recently when I have researched some of this stuff that says that really 3 to 4 megawatts is considered cooperative scale. Because that's basically what it's being used for. It's being used by your local electric cooperative, if there is one in your area, which most areas have one. And so maybe that's something that we can look at or talk about, again, in relation to these small projects. But maybe we should hear, I didn't intend to monopolize the whole meeting, but maybe we need to listen to the public comments now, if you'd like.
Lena, you ready to go back into public session, listen, hear any comments?
We're still in it.
Still
That's
in
why I
public
said I got a
session.
little long-winded, sorry.
Okay.
She hijacked it.
Sorry.
Well, do you have anybody in the audience that wants to speak towards the ZTA-1-21?
Good evening.
Good evening.
State your name, please, if you would.
Sure. My name is Rob Probst. I'm a solar project manager with Urban Grid, a Virginia-based solar developer with over 10 sites in various stages of development in the Commonwealth. We at Urban Grid recognize the challenges of balancing new technologies, uses, and growth with the concerns of the citizens. And I'm grateful to be able to speak with you this evening to help solve some of these problems together. We've been exploring and performing due diligence on a utility-scale solar project in the northwest corner of Greensville County, which we refer to as Monarch Solar, since filing our interconnection application with PJM in July 2018. In my comments tonight, I'd like to share some practical concerns and realistic unintended consequences of the proposed amendments as drafted. Urban Grid supports policies that encourage utility-scale solar projects in remote, agricultural, and managed forest areas, where there are few adjacent residences and good natural buffers. We believe the existing comprehensive plan promotes a policy of clustering solar projects to reduce the impacts of areas of the county where there are residences. Urban Grid utilized these same principles to guide our selection of the site for Monarch Solar. It's important to recognize that compared to the revenue the county receives from the agricultural managed forest areas, the land underlying a solar project is often 8 to 10 times greater, which increases the property tax paid. In addition, the solar equipment generates additional tax revenue under the county's recently adopted revenue share ordinance. Folks often think that the land utilized for a solar project would be lost forever. While the use of the land is long-term, it is in fact a temporary use. Given the low impact of a solar facility, when a solar facility is removed at the end of its useful life, the land can be returned to the previous use if that is what is desired. I can't think of another commercial development use where this is true. Now, some of the challenges and unintended consequences of the proposed amendments that you guys are considering tonight. The 5-mile distance between solar projects. Such a rule would create sprawl, which differs from the clustering policy adopted by the county in the comprehensive plan. And if there's one existing utility scale solar facility in a remote area, then this requirement will push the other utility scale project out of that remote area towards rural residential areas. The 1,000 acre cap on total acreage for all projects. This hurts the county from a revenue and planning perspective. Is my time?
No, keep going.
Okay. This policy has the unintended consequence of underutilizing large contiguous tracts of land that are typically used for managed timber operations where the tax revenue to the county is less than if it were used for solar. Solar use preserves large farm and forest tracts and parcels that can be repurposed to offer agricultural forest uses after the project is decommissioned. The amendment to include a 1 mile minimum to transmission lines. This one, I'm not really clear on whether a portion of the project has to be within 1
That's
mile
3
or the
minutes.
whole project has to be located within a mile from a transmission line. If it's the whole project,
Sir, that's 3 minutes.
I'm sorry.
That's 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll end my comments and I'll share them with Lynn.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. My name is David Lipscomb, and I'm with Mecklenburg Electric Cooperative. And I'd like to ask that, as commissioners, you consider keeping or adding to your plan a cooperative solar definition that would allow a 1 to 5 megawatt opportunity there. One of the things, or one of the solutions that the cooperative is using, and you guys all know, we all are seeking to become more environmentally friendly. We want to be energy responsible. And that 1 to 5 megawatt niche is important to some of the property or projects that the cooperative is working on at this time. In that size range, we can actually put a solar facility just very near a substation, and the power would be delivered to homes that are attached to that substation, never having to go back out onto the grid. So there would be no need to import or export energy. It would all be generated and consumed locally. And that's a big thing when you consider not having to add infrastructure, whether that infrastructure would be a new transmission line, or whether that would be, expanding a right-of-way to put in a larger line. You can utilize the existing distribution line that is serving that community as well as the substation. So we would ask that you all consider a definition of cooperative scale solar from 1 to 5 megawatts. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
My name is Laura Wilson, and I'm with Dominion Energy. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all this evening. As you know, Dominion Energy is about to build out the largest solar energy portfolio in the nation here in the Commonwealth. And this comes partly from the passage of the Virginia Clean Economy Act. But even before we became the implementers of the Virginia Clean Economy Act, Dominion had announced a commitment to achieve a net zero carbon goal by 2050. We did this because we think it is in the best interest of our ratepayers, our stockholders, our employees, the communities where we work and live, and the entire Commonwealth. Solar energy is now one of the least cost energy solutions available, and it's the right thing to do for the environment. So quickly, I'll go through what we think solar development can do for Greensville County. As we've heard from others, tax revenue, your revenue share, gives you a guaranteed amount of tax revenue per year, and there's now recently been passed in legislation. There's the opportunity to sign a siting agreement, which could bring money or property for important capital projects in Greensville County, including anything on your capital improvements plan, funds for deployment of broadband. There's local economic activity from the solar projects. We involve a variety of trades and services, many of which can be sourced from the local community. There's ongoing landscaping, there's fence insulation, engineering, construction, large number of construction jobs during the construction. Utility scale solar, unlike other forms of development, also offers the benefit of requiring less services. Our solar panels don't have children to send to school. I mentioned before the assured revenue. This year, more than ever, we saw that with COVID and the economic downturn, the future is never known. In times of economic uncertainty, the utility scale solar facility
1 minute remaining.
would provide dependable, constant, low-risk source of tax revenue. And then, of course, solar energy replaces the use of fossil fuels, such as coal and natural gas, and that has significant health and environmental benefits for us all. The two amendments proposed are of concern. The less than 1,000 acres for a facility, and also the fact that the facilities need to be more than 5 miles apart. The transmission lines of these facilities, these large utility scale facilities need to interconnect with, already have a limited capacity. So there's inherently a limit of utility scale projects that can be connected to the grid. Many projects need to exceed 1,000 acres to provide the setbacks and buffers and which make it a visually appealing neighborhood.
Time is up.
While
That's your
still
3
being
minutes.
economically feasible. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name
Good
is
evening.
Corey Dukes. I'm with Dominion Woodlands LLC. We're a large timberland owner that has a significant ownership in Greensville County. I'll note that our ownership is well away from Emporia and other more populated parts of the county. I'm here this evening to speak against the proposed amendment to the county solar ordinance. And the reasons for this are fairly straightforward. Right now, and this was kind of discussed by the previous two speakers, but right now our ownership is taxed at the forest use rate, which as was described is fairly low. We are considering the development of a utility scale solar project, which would change the use of the land to solar and dramatically increase the tax revenues that would accrue to the county. And just kind of as a practical example of some of the concerns that were just discussed, the changes that are proposed in the amendment could potentially jeopardize the project we're looking at, which could have the effect of removing the change in tax rates there. I think that would be fairly concerning. The final consideration that I'd like to make is just that if you think about an industrial timberland management, it's a fairly intensive land use already. For an ownership of the size that we have, there's constant and continuous harvesting operations, herbicide applications, reforestation efforts. So all of this is continually generating activity on the property and around the property with the roads. In contrast, if we think about a solar operation, like was just described, after the construction period, it's a fairly passive land use. And so I think the comparison of the two is important there as well. Those are all the thoughts I have, but again, I would like to express my opposition to the amendment changes. Thank you for the time tonight.
founders of Renewable Energy Services. I wasn't aware of the 3-minute time limit, so we prepared a slide deck, but we'll run through it real quickly so we don't have time to get through everything. And a few of those slides were already touched on by Mr. Popin and the commissioner previously. So just a little bit about the company. We're family owned and operated, based in Pittsburgh, North Carolina, which has many of the same characteristics of Emporia, so we enjoy working here. We do have 2 active projects, utility scale, planned for Greensville County, and we are here this evening to express our opposition to the proposed amendments. Touched on this previously, go through. Again, as was discussed, there are a wide variety of different types of solar projects, and they all have many different attributes. So one of our concerns with the proposed ordinance was just the feeling of grouping all of them in together, as there's a wide array of different possibilities, sizes, shapes, forms, designs that are possible between a 1 megawatt and a 100 megawatt. And we felt that was not recognized or addressed specifically with the maximum size or component of the amendment, as well as the 5-mile distance requirement. I'd like to specifically address the 5-mile distance requirement and some of the unintended consequences that could create. The first one would be it materially damages nearby property owners through no fault of their own, and specifically, the formatting didn't come through for whatever reason, but it would eliminate a significant economic opportunity, both for the landowners themselves, but also for the county, which was touched on by previous speakers. And with respect to the landowners,
1 minute remaining.
a lot of the folks that we speak to are looking for ways to keep land in the family, and this proposed change would take away that ability for many folks. It would unfairly reward first movers, whereas, again, speaking with many folks across the Commonwealth, many folks were hesitant to jump in early, and so they wanted to see the industry get more mature. And so, again, this would damage those folks who wanted to see a comprehensive ordinance that Greensville already has come into place before getting in. Again, it doesn't really address the viewshed concerns, because many larger projects have the ability to have significant buffers, undisturbed buffers in many cases, where they can be very, very hard to see from both public right-of-ways and from adjoining properties. And so it eliminates the ability for developers to use those methods. It eliminates the ability for the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors to use their discretion to see, okay, maybe one project is able to
All
really
right, time
show
is up.
itself. And then, I guess I'll leave it there. But again, it sort of...
And everybody, I'm marking where y'all finishing your notes and stuff, and I will get the rest of your notes too, to all the Planning Commission members.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, my name is Mark Cronenbaum. I'm with the law firm Roth Jackson. I'm working with Urban Grid and Monarch Solar, and we are studying a utility scale parcel in the northwest part of the county. You've already heard that we are largely supportive of a number of the policy reasons that are behind your existing ordinance and some of the reasons that you're analyzing it. Again, the desire to locate utility scale projects in remote areas, and your general plan, your general strategy to cluster those in areas so they don't impact residences. The key again is to prevent the impact to residential homeowners here in the county. So I want to highlight just a little bit of background about me. I'm a former municipal administrator myself, and so I'm sort of looking through your proposals. I wanted to highlight a couple policy considerations that would be a good lens for you. You've already heard about the county revenue opportunities. The larger the property is, the fewer restraints. That means that you have a larger revenue opportunity that doesn't have the handcuffs that you get with proffers. Proffers have to have an nexus to the case, a legal nexus, whereas with the kind of revenues you get from solar, you don't have that restraint. So from a policy perspective, that's a very good opportunity for you. From a land use perspective, you do have the opportunity, we heard a little bit about that tonight already, you have an opportunity to preserve very large rural tracts of land in a way that doesn't harm the environment. So family scale, estates scale, timber production scale, farm scale properties get to be preserved for the length of the lease or of the length of the operation
1 minute remaining.
of the solar facility. Those are preserved whole, and so instead of the little chipping away that you get through subdivision of rural areas, you're preserving these rural areas into a long distance into the future in a way that does, again, generates significant revenue, and it doesn't have water quality impacts because there's no tilling, there's no grubbing of stumps going on. There's only one construction period, and of course, large buffers are already provided for it. We would ask that you carefully study the 5 mile. Again, that will cost sprawl evenly across the county and away from your strategy that you've already adopted of concentrating. We would also ask the 1 mile is a little difficult because you have some opportunities that are more than a mile from the transmission line that are far away from any residences.
Time is up, sir.
So again, thank you for your comments, and we appreciate your time.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name's Benny Ligon, and I reside at 3175 Pine Log Road. I guess I'm kind of like Ms. Wiley in a sense. I'm a little bit confused, thinking that the meeting tonight mostly was going to be to discuss the proposed changes to the comp plan, inserting the guidelines that this group, as well as the Board of Supervisors, adopted some year and a half ago. Actually, I'm here tonight to speak in favor of the recommendation of the planning board, planning staff, and recommend that the guidelines that were created a year and a half ago be inserted into the zoning ordinance. I think the benefit to people who live in this county, by having those mandatory guidelines, it would definitely create a level playing ground. That would create a more consistent environment for everyone who makes the application moving forward. But it would also limit the amount of discretionary decision-making that we all struggle with the last 3 years. And that's what divided the county, that's what divided families and neighbors. But for the first time, this would honestly provide some limited protection to county landowners. Because as I stand here tonight, there is none. I live in Hicks Ford District. Of the 5 solar projects, utility scale projects that were mentioned in the report, 4 of those are in Hicks Ford District. 2 of them are only 600 feet apart, and they're within half a mile of where I live. So the troops are rallying as we speak.
1 minute
To
remaining.
control the density in the neighborhood in which we live. There's a reason we live out in the county. And if you don't think the rural character has already been changed, I suggest you take a nice leisurely ride down Pine Log Road, down Fountain Creek Road, down Fish Road. And if you would like to come to my home, I'll be happy to ride you out there. So I would strongly recommend that you adopt the recommendation of the planning staff and place the amendments into the zoning ordinance. Thank you.
anyone else would like to speak on this matter?
You didn't?
My name is Steve Coleman. I reside at 4007 Grassy Pond Road. I too am concerned about solar panels going up everywhere within the county. I do think that in the area where we actually live, that is secluded from everybody else, and we have the opportunity as a landowner to not only generate revenue from us, but for the county as well. I understand that the county adopted, not too long ago, getting paid $1,400
Per megawatt.
per megawatt, which is a substantial amount more than they're getting for any acre of timberland, acre of farmland, and the revenue source that would be generated would actually increase the coffers for Greensville County. The stipulations that you have put here, 5 miles. Greensville County has 297 square miles of area. That's 190,000 acres, roughly. You put a 5-mile radius on a solar site, 5 miles is a consumption of almost 50,000 acres. So when you do the math, 197,000 acres that's actually within the county, that doesn't give you an opportunity to put in many solar farms that are viable project. So with that,
1 minute remaining.
with that, I strongly discourage adopting these recommendations in Article 20. Thank you.
Does anyone else wish to speak? Leon, that looks like it. Do we move to the next?
Yes, we'll move to the next case, which
On
was the
comp plan?
comp plan amendments. Please give me just a second to reshuffle my paperwork. Here we go. As I mentioned in the last report, back in 2019, we put metrics in place in the comp plan to kind of direct where we wanted to see these solar projects located. As you're well aware, stuff that's in the comp plan is just a suggestion. It's not law like it is with the zoning ordinance. So if you were to decide you wish to take these out the comp plan and put in the ordinance, just like we discussed in the previous case, this is the list. We would just be removing the deleting metric number 1, which is the total size, larger than 2 acres and less than 1,000 acres and no more than 75% PV coverage, further than 1 mile from any village, town, city boundary, further than 1.5 miles from another existing or permitted solar facility, and within 1 mile of an electric transmission line. Those were the 4 items that staff would recommend if you wish to add it to the zoning ordinance to delete out of the comprehensive plan. When you look at the planning and issue strategy, you would need to change strategies policy that states utility scale greater than 1 megawatt will be changed to 5 megawatts may be acceptable in agricultural zone districts. And they were the only changes, if you were to take those metrics and put them in the comp plan, into the zoning ordinance, that you would have to make. We discussed all those basically in the last case, the zoning text amendment case. So again, you have basically the same 3 options. You can approve to remove the language pertaining to utility scale solar for the comp plan, or you could make no changes at all to the comprehensive plan as it pertains to utility scale solar. Did you have any specific questions?
We're still in public session. I suppose that if there's anybody else that wants to
Correct,
speak, they can
yes.
speak now, but if there isn't, we'll go back in regular session.
Yeah, would anyone like to speak on the comp plan changes?
Mark Cronenthal with Rolf Jackson. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I just wanted to add a few comments I think that are generally positive and consistent with your policy goals. And I think really what we as a potential applicant studying a significant property for utility scale in the county might recommend to you is that you do keep the opportunity for the thoughtfulness that a special use permit permits in whatever language you select for the comprehensive plan. And that is really putting forward protecting the residents and the other goals that you select first, and not necessarily get stuck on any sort of technical item that would prevent an application that meets your goals otherwise. In order to, remote location. Something that even if it is more than a mile away from the transmission line, is something that will protect the viewshed of the county and be nowhere near places where residents live. So whatever you do, I think that you would want your staff and the board to have that sort of flexibility so that projects that will help the revenue of the county and also not infringe on the rights of citizens, especially residents, that would really be helpful, I think, in terms of the policies that you're working on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Lipscomb, Mecklenburg Electric Cooperative. Very briefly, we would just request that the comprehensive plan also allow that 1 to 5 megawatt opportunity there for still a smaller scale opportunity. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak on the proposed comp plan changes?
not, I guess, then what do we vote to go back into regular session? Can I get a motion, please?
So move.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're back in regular session. So what discussion do we have on the zoning ordinance changes?
Lynn, are you saying that what we are, I mean, I guess what we're already in the process of looking at our comp plan. I mean, you know, we're doing our review now. And so if this is coming up on Wednesday, if the solar section is coming up on Wednesday and we're going to address it then, I mean, my feeling is that we should defer and hear what is being proposed on Wednesday and then, you know, revisit this again later, because, you know, I do not agree with changing the comp plan. I do not agree with changing the zoning ordinance. I may agree with, again, some clarity and definitions that we need to discuss, but I think we need to discuss this now that we've heard from the public, and we need to hear what the Berkeley Group is going to say, that we need to take this under advisement. It's kind of a lot to digest in one night. That's my thought, is that we defer this. I don't think that we're prepared to make any significant changes tonight until we talk through this some more.
I would, and Lynn, I'll say this, I thought that the study that you did on the solar was excellent. And it's really nice getting something from our staff and seeing our staff's position for a change. I really did appreciate that. Two things I would like to kind of get your thought process on. And one is, I understand that the 5-mile spacing was sort of a placeholder. And so I was curious your thought process when you prepared the map of the 2.5-mile spacing.
That's just to give you an idea of what 2.5 looks like. We probably need to make about 5 maps because the maps get so cluttered. Maybe a map showing a mile and a half, 2, 3, whatever. So on that map, I tried to illustrate what 5 miles was and then 2.5, which would be half of that. The areas you see highlighted in green would be the areas along the power line infrastructure if you had the 2.5-mile condition in place.
What was the thought process behind it being, you know, you suggesting 5 miles? Again, Greensville County is not a very large county, and if you're at the Brunswick line, 5 miles takes you to the city limits. So I'm not really sure why, you know, I don't understand what 5 miles means.
It's just an arbitrary number to start discussion to see what y'all think.
Well, it's not arbitrary when it's a proposal. You should say, let's talk about the distance and not, if you pull 5 miles out of the sky, that's a little misleading. Because I agree that 5 miles is pretty, it's restrictive. It's basically saying, well, we're not allowing solar.
It restricts.
I'm going to say this. In past, we have had more people, more petition of complaints about solar. And I'd like to say this. Everybody that come before this board to speak to us, none of them lived in the county, they live elsewhere. So I have to always bear in mind the voice of the citizens of Greensville County. That's what I would have to respect. And most of the voices, when I talk to people in Greensville County, they do not want to see a solar farm sitting in their backyard.
I don't want to see a solar farm sitting in anyone's backyard either, but solar developers wouldn't be coming to the county if landowners didn't give them permission to develop a project on their land. So the landowners are in essence speaking when a solar developer speaks,
Yeah.
because we can't have a solar project unless the landowner gives permission.
But the landowners can speak.
I've only heard one landowner tonight not want it. I've heard one landowner tonight not want solar. That was Mr. Liggett. Everyone else that's been represented tonight has got Greensville County landowners on their side because they're wanting to develop projects, and they can't develop them unless the landowner agrees to it.
That's why we're sitting there. The landowners want to develop it. But the
Yes.
people that are not landowners, is just residents in the city, or meaning the county, they're the one they're talking to me, and those are the ones that I'm listening to. I'm not listening to landowners that want to put up a solar farm. I'm looking at the residents that I represent in this county.
Well, I think, I agree with you if you're talking to residents in the county who don't want a solar farm in a residential area. I don't want a solar farm in a residential area. We've got residential zones, I guess about 4 or 5 residential zones in the county, and I don't think that we need to have solar in any of those. We only allow large-scale solar at the moment in an agricultural zone, so that it is not close to a viable neighborhood. I most definitely agree with you. But I think when we put restrictions that are overly restrictive, we are trying to legislate a problem away. And it's really hard to legislate that because there are always exceptions to the rule. Because there's a project, that might check all the boxes and it really not be in the best location. And then you may have another project that is in an ideal location where there are no homes for miles away, but it doesn't check all of your boxes. And so if the intent of your project is to be out of sight, out of mind, then I think that's why we need to have the ability to look at every project and to vote on every large-scale project, like we've been doing in the past. We vote it up or we vote it down based on its location, based on the parameters that we set as far as setback, as far as buffering and all that. But if a project is picked well and it's out of sight, and it doesn't affect a neighborhood or even 1 or 2 homes, it doesn't even affect those, then why shouldn't the project then be allowed? Again, there was some argument to be made in the past because the county really wasn't going to get that much revenue from a project, but now you passed a revenue share agreement, which is $1,400 a megawatt per year. It's not based on, on machinery and tools, which is depreciable, which it decreases in the future. This is, you can bank on your $1,400. So the bigger, your large-scale projects, you're going to get a considerable amount of money from those. You're also going to get a considerable amount of money from the property tax on it because your property taxes are going to significantly increase. Now your agricultural land is probably valued anywhere around, $1,000 to $1,200 an acre. I did some digging this past week and read some reports where property values on solar, it can be as much as anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 an acre because they're considered light industrial. So that also brings significant revenue to the county.
Lynn, the other thing that I wanted to, if you could just elaborate a little bit on is the way I read this, the smaller projects, 1 to 5 megawatt, would not even be allowed.
what's the thought process on that?
I think the concern of the board was that these 1 to 5 megawatt projects could go anywhere on a 3-phase system. Like I previously stated, we've had them looking at areas that are zoned residential. We've had them looking at areas that are zoned industrial, commercial, as well as A1 areas.
But again, we don't allow those in residential areas.
They would have to come through.
They would
and
have
go
to be
with zoning
rezoned.
Text amendment to rezone the property and everything, that's correct.
Right. And so, no, I can say right now that I would not be, we just had that project that came up back in December, that was on Country Club Road, and that is zoned residential. They wanted to put up a solar farm. We did not, we deferred it, but I wanted to deny it because it's zoned residential for a reason. That's an ideal location to build. It's for homes, for a future subdivision. Doesn't need to have a solar farm on that, my opinion. So we can already see that process seems to be working by not allowing those in a residentially zoned area.
Well, can't we overload some of these watersheds with too many of these things?
As far as any sort of environmental impact on a river, I don't know of any. Again, I think that's what we're going to discuss on Wednesday.
I heard one guy say earlier that you could return it farmland. I'm a peanut farmer.
Steve, speaking to your mic.
Speaking to your mic.
Greg Walters.
Sit right there.
I'm a peanut farmer. This one's dead too.
No, speaking to it.
Oh, okay.
There you
I'm a
go.
peanut farmer, and he said you could return it. You cannot return it to peanut land because the zinc gets so high in the land that peanuts will not grow. So you got to be careful with some of this stuff because there's a lot of detrimental stuff in solar panels, they tell you, but I done read a whole lot. There's a whole lot of stuff that we're not being told. So I'm kind of leery of a lot of things in some of them if we overload different watersheds throughout our county, because we got a small county, so you can get it in trouble quick. Because weren't they talking about the environmental impact on the Nottaway? You know, where we get our water from?
That's going to be one of the discussions
Oh, okay.
at the joint work session coming up next week.
I think that, again, anything that I read, I think we read some studies from NC State that refuted that there was any type of problem on the land with zinc. Again, I think you can find a study to say at the end of the day, whatever it is that you want the study to say, and I am by no means an expert on that, but, some of these solar panels don't even go in concrete. They're just in the ground. Some do go in concrete. Some of these zinc posts are probably not any different than fence posts that we have, I don't know. It would be nice to see into the future, to see that 30 years from now, we're going to have a problem. But again, solar has been happening, not in Greensville County, obviously, but it's been happening in the United States and around the world much longer than it's been happening in the state of Virginia and in Greensville. There are projects in North Carolina that are almost, well over 20 years. I haven't heard of anything cataclysmic happening, so I tend to think that it's not.
Well, I encourage everybody to try and make the meeting next Wednesday night to talk about the environmental impacts of the solar developments. Lynn, what can we do to not accept applications until we can act on this? do we have any other options? I mean, I think it's already been mentioned that we consider deferring it.
So you're saying, what can we do to stop any new applications until we go through
Yeah, do we have any
the
options
process
there?
with the Berkeley group
Yes, sir.
that we're going through? You could make a motion to remove utility scale solar from the zoning ordinance, table 4.1, as a use allowed by special use project, and then revisit it, and you can always add everything back at a later date.
Well, why would we do that?
He was just asking me a question,
Well,
what could we do?
I understand that, but when you do that, that's like saying, well, I'm going to close the door to my business and I'm going to not allow anybody to come in until I can decide what kind of products I'm going to sell next week. I don't think that's good business. I think it's incumbent upon us to get this done. We have, again, all of us were on the board in 2019, and this exact same thing happened where the board wanted to put a moratorium on it, and the citizens spoke, and it didn't happen, and we came up with this plan, and now all of a sudden, we have to revisit it. And again, what I'm hearing is that the Board of Supervisors said that we needed to revisit this, but I don't really know why we need to revisit it. I haven't been really given a clear answer as to why the Board of Supervisors wants us to revisit it. I know that we're in the middle of our comp plan review, and we are about halfway through, and the comp plan is going to be finished in December, and we may discover some things on Wednesday night that we want to incorporate into the comp plan, and if so, we will. But I'm not really sure why we're talking about this again. We haven't even heard any solar cases in a year.
Well, is there any other discussion? Any of the other commission members have any comments? Well, what are the wishes of the board, the planning commission?
My wish is to leave everything the way it is currently written. Again, we're going to be discussing the comp plan for the next 6 months. If something comes up, we decide that it needs to go into the comp plan at that time, we will visit it. What Steve was just alluding to, if there's an issue with watershed, or Berkeley Group suggested that we put some language in there about that, well, we talk about that then. I don't know why we are revisiting all of this stuff. Again, we all talked about this in 2019. It's the exact same stuff.
Well, I'm not comfortable taking any action on this tonight.
Well, if we defer this, then we are deferring it until the May meeting?
Yes.
Is that what it? Okay, well, then let's defer to the second Tuesday in May.
Is that a motion? Are you making a motion?
Well, no, I didn't make the motion. I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, if we're done discussion, I guess I can ask for a motion to ZTA-1-21.
Yeah, I move that we defer to the next meeting.
I second that.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Have one abstention. Were there any opposed? Okay, no opposition. Okay, so that issue will be deferred until the next Planning Commission meeting in May. Okay, the next item on the agenda was the comp plan changes. Is there any more discussion on that? If not, do I have a motion on that?
Again, I move to defer to the May 11th meeting.
Do I have a second?
I didn't hear you.
Did we get a second?
Got a second.
Oh, okay, I second that.
Okay, all right. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise?
Abstain.
Have one abstention. Okey-doke. All right, Leon, what's next? Are there any other matters?
That's all, just a reminder, next Wednesday,
Next Wednesday night at 6?
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, and Treva has your packages for that.
Packages for some of you right now.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. See y'all Wednesday night.